it's all about specialization, doing something you really want to do and having a career path that you can actually visualize.
How can I do this when I'm so spread out? There's always steps to do it. It might not be easy steps. You might have to take some steps in between, but there's always steps to do it because it's really about an approach and an innovation approach and not just focusing on doing the same thing in the same way. So I think you can do it no matter where you are.
51% of our employees today are Gen Z out of our 760 employees, and they want to see a career path. They want to know when they're going to get to the top, and they want to focus on things that they want to do.
Okay, we're here with Heidi and John. Heidi, who are you?
Hey, I'm Heidi Turner from Blaton Turner in Seattle.
Excellent. And John?
John Carlson, president of Mark Taylor Residential out of Scottsdale, Arizona.
Actually, we had, you guys got mentioned on another podcast. What bad words did they say about Mark Taylor?
What bad words?
Do we have enough time?
A hard time.
Do we have enough time?
No, they were picking on you as a good example of, no, I can't remember now. Like, it's all scooting past me. I thought you were going to pick up that pitch, but
yeah, I apologize.
I totally
Just a little
dropped
bit
it.
later in the day.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting late.
Yet.
Sun's coming down. You need a cocktail.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
no, they
My
were-
memory will come back. Yeah.
Well,
That's how it works sometimes.
centralization is what you guys were talking about. So we'll get into that. First of all, though, Reed was just making fun of the word centralization. Should we be calling it something else? Or is that the right word?
Specialization.
Oh, nice, Heidi.
I'm not making fun. It was more just how this industry latches on to certain trends, and then it takes over, for 2 or 3 years. And maybe this one will last longer. It already has. I don't know where we are on the centralization train, but I know it's in full motion.
We won't name any names, but I remember coming last year to AIM, and it was post like the launch of everyone talking about overusing the word centralization ad nauseum. And I think every company had a centralized capacity within their business model on the vendor side. So stretching into that marketing aspect of, is it really centralization, or do you just put up a new banner? That's how it started.
Yeah,
Totally. Well, Heidi, I'm more familiar with your portfolio, but it would have felt that you guys kind of went this specialization route years ago. Is that true?
Yeah, we pretty much did. Yeah, so we started out doing specialization as we were figuring out, how do we do things unique and different and cool? And as we did that, we realized that we can't have a one-size-fits-all approach, that it takes unique skill sets and specialty things to do things in a little bit different way. And when you're trying to be top of market in markets that are oversaturated with new development and trying to catch those really unique boutique ownership groups, unique boutique residents, and really providing great service and just working with cool new stuff, you have to be really specialized. You're specialized in your branding. You're specialized in your approach, and really customizing, specializing as you go through to rent a property. We've been doing that for a long time. But what we're really noticing is as we were doing that, how we did it. There's one thing for doing it at the sites and to really create this unique, custom, cool brand. And but how do you really play that out in the day to day? And what we found is it took more than the one size fits all approach. So it took a higher level of sophistication than what a traditional property manager who would be entering invoices into property management software system and would be making sure that units get turned over, or doing 20 different things, being a jack of all trades but not a specialist of any. So what we're finding is that in order to do things in a unique and different way, we had to do things in a specialized way.
And John, you guys also for years, as my understanding, have been more closer to this centralized model, if not forever. But would you give us the history there?
I think it would be traced back to 2018, which is remarkable to think that was 6 years ago. But it was a lot about how do we design a CRM tool at the time to really understand, because we had so many leads occurring, but we weren't tracking it very well. For the longest time ever, as Heidi knows, we just buy advertising and hope they'd show up at the door. So there wasn't a real analytic model to it. I would say it got accelerated, as we talked about on the panel, during the pandemic. And we recognized that we were still conducting business, even though our leasing offices were locked down. We had no one going into units on the service side. yet we were still functioning. We're actually leasing more units than we otherwise would have in April of 2020. So we just tore down the model and said, okay, let's look at this from a different perspective and try to understand what we're actually doing on a day-to-day at the site level, every task, every role, and just unpacking it. And we realized after about a 6-month summary of that the old model was dead. It was done. And we called that out today, rest in peace, old model. We had a gravestone, and rest in peace 2020. And for the last 4 years, we've been, working our asses off to figure out the specialization aspect. And it's not uncommon in other sectors. You think about doctors, use a sports analogy. You have wide receivers playing wide receiver only at the best of the best levels. You have punters. All they do is punt the ball. Forever we were generalists, right? We had an assistant manager doing leasing, management, bookkeeping, accounting, resident journey, all of those things. There's no possible way that one person who's 22, just out of college, could do all of those things at a high level, right? So specialization is the key, and you're allowed to do that if you create a centralized platform because you can scale it and afford to do it. So I think that was the genesis. It really kicked off in 18, but the pandemic, we doubled down and fast forward, here we are today.
And as far as I think, I'll take it from the layman. Like, I'm not on the operator side, obviously. But my understanding is, as much as you can, let's reduce. I mean, this sounds bad. I've always been told people don't want to talk about reducing headcount, but isn't that kind of the point here? Is like you want to minimize the amount of labor in some ways when you specialize?
Yes and no. Actually, I think it's about doing it better.
Okay.
And so it's not necessarily about minimizing headcount. What we're finding is we're gaining efficiencies. So in some ways, headcount is minimized, but what we're seeing is it's still that people are doing it better, people are doing it faster, and people have more flexibility, and they're enjoying what they do because they're doing something that they really like to do, that's in their skill set, that when you're good at something, you can do it over and over again, and you can do it so much better and faster than others, and they enjoy it. And then you can also give, as people get more efficient and people enjoy what they do, they stick around longer, and they also end up earning more. And so it's about having higher pay, it's about having growth opportunities, and it's just about, just the whole growth path. Everybody, if you ask, I mean, money's always important for people coming in, but what's more important is growth. People want to know that they can grow, that they can want to do new and different things, and just keep adding to them. And if they could keep adding to their, if you can keep adding things to that, if they can do things in a more efficient way, they can handle more units. If they can handle more units, they can get more pay.
Yeah. See, that really connects with me because, Reed, this reminds me of, I think Heidi's aware of this, but we're on a 4-day work week. And when we transitioned to the 32 hours, we also demanded 20% increase in productivity. So we increased, it's almost, if you think about it, almost like we were demanding 40% more productivity because we're cutting out.
It's such a nasty
I
word.
did
I would say
pound my fist.
We reset expectations.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, so I'm just saying that makes sense to me, though, because we also, in the last maybe 2 years, came across Patrick Lencioni, 6 Working Geniuses. And it's what you're saying is he's like, if you work in your zone of genius, you can kind of do it tirelessly. But if you're working in your area of frustration, then you burn out quickly. And so when you talk about a leasing agent having 17 things they have to do or whatever it is, it's not all their area of genius, right? So they may burn out. So that does connect with me. And then as we've seen, if we then hone in on people's, be very specific with what the requirement of the position is, and then we find specialists for that, then productivity can go up 40%, and they're happier and we can pay them more. So that does connect with me.
Yeah. Clearly you guys read the Chris Voss How to Negotiate Master Negotiation book, because part of your
Never
demands
split the
were
difference.
never split the difference. Clearly your demands were part of the, where do we actually work? So what the audience can't see is what I'm facing right now. This is your studio.
Yeah.
I see a pool, bikinis, and the ocean right behind you.
That's
trees.
our office too. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty damn good. Well played.
You haven't seen our Zoom backgrounds yet.
But to that point, I totally agree with Heidi. It's all about specialization, doing something you really want to do, and having a career path that you can actually visualize. So 51% of our employees today are Gen Z, out of our 760 employees. And they want to see a career path. They want to know when they're going to get to the top, and they want to focus on things that they want to do. They don't want to do, perhaps customer service. They just want to do bookkeeping or vice versa. And in specialization and centralization, you're allowing more career paths and allowing their journeys to take fold in a myriad of different ways. And it allows you to track more talent and pay people more.
So is there a certain management company that this wouldn't be a good model for? Meaning, like, I know Blanton, you guys have high density. I think you guys are pretty high density, at least in the Phoenix area. So is it because of your density that you can pull this off, or just who might it not be a good fit for?
I think it's a good fit for everybody.
Okay.
We were just talking with someone in our session and they asked, how can I do this when I'm so spread out? There's always steps to do it. It might not be easy steps. You might have to take some steps in between, but there's always steps to do it because it's really about an approach and an innovation approach and not just focusing on doing the same thing in the same way. So I think you could do it no matter where you are.
Yeah, I think I often hear the excuse of we just don't know how to start. And I understand that feeling, but you just have to start. And everyone's busy, right? So the existing model, you're busy. I took my 12-year-old daughter to one of the homeless areas of Phoenix downtown. And I said, honey, look how busy the homeless folks are. I mean, they're busy doing stuff. And I said, you can use that as an excuse. But when you think about this longer term, you say, okay, I have a vision and I want to get to from point A today to B. You're going to have to sacrifice some things and invest time in understanding what that is, but you have to get started. You really got to pull the trigger, and it can just be little bite-sized items. You can pull an assistant manager off the site, allocate some bookkeeping dollars to that actual specific role, but you have to get started, and you can't use excuses like I don't have concentration in one market or I don't have the capital to get going. There's lots of ways to start.
So if you picked one meaning tactical way to move forward, what is where would you have the highest confidence that that any management company could start and it'd help gain traction because they'd see the success?
I think what John just mentioned, pulling that assistant manager off, pulling off any of the bookkeeping technical roles, pulling that off, that's an easy thing that anybody could do.
Agreed. I mean, just pick something that you can create efficiencies with technology and then elevate the personal element. And I think what you can't ever get away from is the personal or human interaction, the human experience. If you read Hubert Jolly, ran Best Buy for years.
I don't know that, but
it's the human magic, right? So if you're creating that connection with that human, 81% of our 5-star reviews, they reference a person by name from our staff, whether it's maintenance or admin. So create avenues of technology efficiencies to allow for that human to do more things from a customer perspective. So you're creating 5-star employee engagement. Like, oh, I love to do these things. These mediocre tasks I don't want to do, that's taken care of by technology, AI, system, software. But I can interact with you and we can have a great experience and everyone's 5-star.
Cool. Reed, are you going to talk and ask him about ROI? Or
Yeah, I got lots of questions.
Yeah.
He's been taking notes diligently as he watches the bikinis and beaches.
I had my questions set, and then you just had to remind me about the bikinis that are walking by in the background,
and guys in trunks.
Yeah. Make sure Heidi it's in on this. So trade-offs, I always like to hear about, and we challenge many of our employees, whether it's the front lines or mid-level or senior management, to be better at understanding that. And I've told many of them, you guys may not agree with this, Heidi, hearing what you said, that there's always trade-offs. Are you guys going to tell me that there's no trade-offs for centralization? You didn't have to sacrifice, compromise anything. It's a complete win-win. And I'm just pushing, because we actually had, I don't know if you know Sina from Appley, the CEO there, but he was at our summit speaking. And, I said, so what are you going to talk about? And he was like, centralization. I was like, okay. And he said, but I promise Reed a little bit different spin, in the way that I'm going to talk about it, think about it. I was like, could you argue against it? I just want to know, could you argue against centralization? He was like, that's going to be a tough one. And I was like, all right, well, get ready because I'm going to put you on the spot when you're up there speaking. So I'm not asking you to argue against it, but I think that's from another book we read where IBM, or was it Intel?
Intel.
Exactly. And every big decision you have to argue with the same conviction against as you do for. And it seems like this is a tough one right now because of how fast this train's moving. So could you guys share, do you see any trade-offs in a move to a more specialized or centralized model?
I think one of the challenges that we've seen so far, is just as we've been going through, is just making sure we are communicating right and not creating more silos. As we're becoming more specialized, it's so easy to forget that there's other things outside your own specialization. And so, how do you um, cross those silos, and how do you ensure that your communication is spot on so everybody knows what you're doing? And you can do that with technology. There's lots of ways to do that, but I think those are the two key pieces that we have seen. Like, oh, this could be bad if I don't fix this fast. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
I feel like, and Heidi, I think I would probably agree with myself that this business as well as I do, and uh, there's so many opportunities
Yeah.
in terms of centralization from old model. But I could argue, similar to Heidi, I would say that if you're not creating buy-in with your entire team and creating the right vision and narrative, you can lose people. And imagine telling, I know plenty of guys that have been doing, service side of the equation, supervisor, 25 years plus, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to take scheduling away from you. Are you creating a situation where that person feels less valued because that's where they found value for 25 years? uh, my argument is no. If you tell the right story narrative and give them a vision of what it will be like longer term, like your job will be easier, and you can create more value for the things that matter, like customer experience, like follow-up, all of those things. So it would be very hard to argue against new model, old model for me.
Okay. Well, what would you say the biggest lessons then that you've learned? You said 2018 is when it kind of started in earnest, but then accelerated after the pandemic. And Heidi, we didn't put a specific date on it, but yeah, biggest lessons. I don't think we've really fleshed that out with the two of you since you've moved to this new model of specialization and centralization.
I would say there's no easy button, right? I think a lot of different groups or operators will look for that easy button, like, oh, I can get this from a Yardy shop or a real page, or oh, just add the system and that will take care of it. That's not true today, and I think there's still a lot of learning to be done. And I think the lesson I've learned the most is I wish I would have started sooner and made all of the same mistakes, but did them faster and quicker so I could move forward. But I think the learning evolution is just at the beginning, even though we've been doing this for really 4 years. And I think in 5 years, um, it'll look like the true fourth generation industrial revolution with AI locked on or locked in. And I think the advancements will be so significant that it'll look like we're crawling today.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that as well. And I think for us, you mentioned like, we always keep asking ourselves, okay, we're a very people focused company. We always say people are the most important thing. And as we go through our own journey, we're like, okay, can this be done through the technology? Can this be done with people? And if anything, we keep thinking, oh, this technology solution is going to solve this. And then we either overestimate how much people power it's going to take if we're trying to do it just with people, a change in workflow just with people, and then underestimate the technology piece and or vice versa. So I think finding that balance and learning where, hey, maybe if I just, if I adjust my workflows and do this, do whatever, do accounting this way, maybe it should be that I have AI doing this.
Mhm.
And I'm so focused on the people part of it because that's just who I am and what I do, that sometimes I miss the technology pieces. And then sometimes I get so excited about some technology pieces, opportunities, that I forget about putting in the right amount of people interaction. So it's always about balance.
Mhm.
And so for me, I think that's probably the key takeaway.
Yeah. Well, I got two more and I can hand it back, or I could go to 10 more.
Yeah.
But who do you see as the biggest benefactor? I'm going to break this just into
Yeah.
three basic kind of pools or subsets here of the specialization and centralization between the resident, the operators and owners, and the employees.
I mean, that's an easy one for me. We did a white paper back in 2020, post the dissection of all of these roles and what the opportunities could be. And the answer is yes, yes, yes. So if you can create a 5-star employee journey experience, right? So you're giving them a specialized role that they want to do. You're giving them a career path and you're paying them more. Check. If that happens, it's likely if you have a happy employee, guess what? You get a translation to happy customer. So you're creating smart home technology, more efficiencies. They're getting their work orders done quickly. They're being communicated with. 24/7 if need be, through AI chat, whatever it is, the customer experience will be better. Check the box. From a ownership perspective, you're going to get a better work product, in my opinion. We focus a lot on maximizing our third-party investors and our owners on the self-owned side. And if you can maximize that investment, you can squeeze more out of that NOI because you're creating efficiencies, you're reducing wages, even though you're paying people more because you don't need as much staff doing the mundane tasks. That's a win for ownership. So again, I think it's green check marks across the board.
Yeah, I would agree. And we're finding it everywhere. And we started, again, our approach has always been people first. And so we started with our goals of, hey, how can we allow people to work when, where, and how they want? How can they be able to do it? Have more flexibility and time. And then how can we how can we provide growth opportunities for people as well? And so we started with our people as we're going through this, and it is a check mark. How can we pay more, and how can we have happier employees? So if we can do that, one, growth opportunities, more pay, flexibility, that is what everybody wants. Have that, great, check. And that also provides lower turnover of our employees as well. We were finding that when we had too much turnover, during the pandemic, and when we had higher turnover than normal, we were finding 3 to 5% NOI drops for every month that we were without people. So, that's a pretty major deal. And so if we have less turnover, better paid people, happier people, that provides a better bottom line for all of our investors and for all of our clients. And so when you can provide a better NOI, you have more stability, you have higher level service. That also leads to higher level service for our residents. And so it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, all boats rise.
All boats rise.
I said 2 questions. I would still have 2 questions. All right. But this is my have your cake and eat it too question. When Dave and I've been talking about kind of where we're taking Digible from here, and when we've tapped our network and asked about kind of some of the bigger trade-offs, and some of the investments we're looking to make strategic bets. We hear a lot, just be prepared. Like, you can't have your growth and have your profits. Like, one of those, on some level, you're going to have to sacrifice. It's almost impossible to deliver both of those during periods of change, major change. So, fair question to ask, right? Centralization is a huge shift, big bet that many operators are now making. Would you say that is a potential trade-off? So it's like, just understand, in this transformation and this journey that we're on, it's going to turn towards more of a growth, or that may seem like just the opposite. It's like, well, of course, this is going to be more of a profit thing, but we can still grow. So has that come up? Have you guys thought about that, where one of these might be sacrificed a little bit? Or is centralization, as we keep talking, win-win? Yeah, we can actually grow and generate as much or better profits.
Yeah,
is that too direct or personal?
No, that's cool.
I'm not saying you have to disclose anything.
No, I appreciate that.
Give us the numbers.
Yeah. And part of the reason that we started this, because we saw what was happening, and we, we're a very good operator, where we do a unique specialty boutique operating service. And we were seeing ourselves, because whenever our people spin, we were seeing ourselves spin. Mm-hmm. And so we were seeing, seeing ourselves spin, going, okay, you can't keep operating in the same way now, when we have, when people were so difficult to come by. And so if we didn't do this, we would be part of the old operating model. We would be having a memoriam for the old, for whatever. And so we can't keep operating that way. We had to change. And so we had no choice. Plus, I think it's better off for everyone. Yeah.
But I'm going to push you a little more, Heidi.
Go for it.
Not for
I'm
the
trying
numbers.
to not answer your question.
No, Heidi. But so therefore, would you say this shift is allowing you to potentially, if you wanted, to really continue pursuing and growing at the same trajectory that you were before, and not have to compromise the bottom line?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's going to help us. I think it's going to help us grow more. Yeah.
Okay.
So Oh, good. We're adding some folks. To
we're adding an Apple Watch call to the podcast.
Somebody had an opinion on
we
that.
we got the 17-year-old daughter on the Apple Watch. Hi, Mom.
What do you think, Mom?
She called a friend.
Yeah,
She was like,
she
"Would you
did.
please
I
answer
didn't
this?"
call a friend. Reed asked me a question that was too hard. I didn't want to answer it.
Well, it's the 20-mile march. If you know Jim Collins, talks about don't grow too fast, don't grow too slow.
Exactly.
Who do you want to be? The one that has like the mercurial like trend lines, or the one that is just steady?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if centralization like helps support that 20-mile march and that steady growth that's also responsible and generates, or is there any kind of compromise that comes with it? So
I think it's steady.
Yeah, for me, I think it was Henry Ford. He said, "You can say I think I can, or I think I can't, but either way, it'll be what you think." I think I can have my cake and eat it too. And could your trend line do this or that? I think part of it's a necessity because of demographics. In Arizona, as an example, we have 0.71 workers for every one worker we need. The U.S. Business Chamber of Commerce says Arizona is rated as a severe. That's a problem long term. And I just think about how do you change the multifamily sector for the better. This does that because you create specialization, you create efficiencies, you create more opportunities for income, bottom line growth, as Heidi mentioned. There's no question in my mind. I mean, I can see it very clearly. And I think it's mostly because I know exactly what the old model did and does, and it still exists today, and how it performs and how it doesn't. We just accepted it. We really did. And we didn't have the technology. We didn't have that pop in the back to say, "Oh, you got to go," right? That coach pounding you saying, "Hey, I'm blowing the whistle. You got to run harder." I think the pandemic was that jolt, whatever you want to use for an analogy, but that kickstarted it, and it's not going backwards. So if you want to stick with the old model in 2030, if you don't have a vision or a plan, you're going to be stuck without a service technician for 6 months. You're going to have work orders that are piling up. You're not going to have satisfied customers. Your building will be 60% full. Those are not things I'm going to ever allow to happen. And I think this is really the only pathway to get there. Now, things are going to change from now until 2030, but you have to be vigilant and thoughtful about what that looks like in 5, 10, 15 years. And we're trying to play the infinite game. And I think centralization is a
love
piece
the
of that.
reference.
Yeah, he's
all over
getting it. Yeah. Simon Sinek. Well done.
Simon
Absolutely.
Sinek? Yeah. All right. Squeezing in this one, and then if we have time or guys have any other thoughts, comments. But one of the things I thought you might say when I asked you about the trade-offs, and this comes from some direct experience, not in this industry, but Dave and I, you may not know, but we both come from media backgrounds. So work for CBS, Cox Media Group, and most recently we connected Digital First, it's $1 billion like media company. And I remember when I joined, I was brought there to help with some change and transformation on the digital side. It's like, we know we need to make changes. And just so you know, we have a decentralized model when it comes to innovation, because we know how difficult it can be if you have a centralized model. A lot of the ideas don't surface up, and it can also stamp out, some of the culture and innovation that, we really thrive and count on, frankly, at the market level. So I thought perhaps that might be, a concern or consideration, but I don't know how much that translates to multifamily as you think about, okay, if we're moving really everything towards a centralized model, do we potentially lose some of the innovation that we were experiencing, with the decentralized?
I have a great argument against that, but you can go first, Heidi.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually was that was our thought process, and no offense, that was our thought process 10 years ago.
I didn't say I agreed. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, if you can't tell, Reed and I don't work at that media company anymore. So
it's okay.
Yeah,
there was I better stop. I'm not going to say.
To your point, but tie it together. Think about the old cable model, and there was, I think everyone knows cutting the cord and what that means today. I think that the old cable model was, you think about boxing yourself in because you have ESPN, you got to pay $20, whatever that is in that cable package. I think that's the old model. I think the new model for us is the Netflix, the Hulu, the next age of innovation, and you can't ignore it, right? So you have to adjust. And I can't imagine us just having a cable package anymore, where residents scream saying, "I don't want cable anymore. I just want access to the internet so I can stream what I want," right? I want to have access to all of these little different nuances of the life I want. I don't want to just have a canned 150 channel package. So I think this will accelerate innovation. because it's taking that old model away. It allows us to hire more A players. So if you follow Reed from Netflix, who started Reed Hastings, he talks about the dynamic of A players. So I think this allows us to add a lot more A players because we know the D players pull you down by the ankle, suffocate you, and the A players leave. If you can have 10 A players on a team in one silo of your business, you're going to accelerate the dynamism, the advancements in terms of growth and innovation and all of those things. So I think it affords us the opportunity to even compete against other sectors financially because we're paying people the amounts that we can to get A players.
Love the argument, love the comparison,
but I could be wrong.
No,
wrong all the time.
But we talk a lot. Just to somewhat translate, it sounds like what you're saying is this not only will afford more innovation, but optionality is table stakes now. And when you're the package like cable or whatever, that's the opposite of that.
Correct.
And so through these efficiencies, we can create more optionality. For our
Let me
employees,
add one
for our
model.
residents.
One piece would be, we talked about this at the very end with the woman in the audience. She asked a great question. She has, really sparse locations in terms of concentration of assets. So maybe one in one city, one in another state. And I said, but now with the new model, you can attach yourself to gig workers. So you might have someone that's a retired plumber who just wants to do odd jobs. I see Turner is hiring for a gig type worker part-time just to do jobs. So from a centralized platform, you can schedule those out through AI and say, we're going to hire Bill on Friday for 4 plumbing jobs and just pay him on a per job basis. So you don't have to have, again, a full-time employee, but you're actually accessing the gig workers of tomorrow. And I think there will be more of that over time.
Yeah. Another great example.
Is there any way though that in some ways from the tech stack needed for this that you end up locking yourself in? I mean, it's funny because we've had a lot of good references here, but have you read 7 Powers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Of course.
So they talk about process power, but they talk about switch cost is one way that some companies can, and I know Heidi, we've talked about this where you have been very upset about some of this, how you've been locked in the high switch cost. So I'm just,
or the squirrel, right? The squirrel model, like, new technology. I'm going to go here.
There's that too. Yep. So I'm just wondering, is there truly almost like a little bit of a downside here? Because once I would imagine you do need these systems that are right now, because then it's not an open API ecosystem. You basically are going to commit to one type of tech stack to really facilitate this and make it work. And then in some ways you can't be as nimble. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, for me, I think of, we're very descript on the type of software that we introduce. We're also helping build with the union, our CRM, AI, centralization platform tool. But I think it's about ensuring, okay, if you're going to go down this path, you have to have certain parameters that you will not compromise on. So we have to have open API platforms. So we use Resman because of that specifically. We don't want to be siloed into one platform. So we can bolt on the best of the best and grow that way. So I think it's about how you think about that process. I agree with you. You can't just bounce around with different tech stacks. It will overwhelm you. And we still have today, we have too many technology, different avenues to support our business, and we'll streamline that. But I think it's also over time, it will, it's the big TV you bought 5 years ago was $5,000. Today it's $1,000. I think there will be more of that. It'll be more nimble. It'll be more affordable. You have more access to the right AI over time as that grows. So I think if you don't lock yourself into legacy assets that maybe don't see the future, and you stick to your, have the fortitude to understand I have to be open API or have to be nimble. Nimble's the key, right? So if you're 500,000 units, it might be hard to adjust. So growth matters, scale matters, but do you get too big, you can't turn the ship? Well, potentially that's an issue.
Yeah. Well, it just also reminds me, when we started in the early days, the first time we talked to you guys at Blanton, one of the things we that Reed used to talk all the time was how we had built our model in a different way than other agencies. So for us, we allow you to flex your budget with just a few days notice, or you can cancel anytime. There's no cancellation fee. There's no startup cost, blah, blah, blah. And we couldn't have, unless we had built from the ground up that way, there's no way we could have supported it. So if we had already been G5, yeah. So that's where, in this case, because you guys, aren't one of the top 3 that maybe have this amalgamation of all this stuff already, you guys can build the foundation so that you can go fast in the years ahead.
So. Yeah, I mean, pick up just a little bit more on that question about, the commitments that you have to make, well, it sounds like, John, you're very deliberately trying to avoid that, and trying to leverage more of the open technology or the more compatible, versus getting beholden to just one
Yep.
stack. Um, but I wonder, and if you guys feel this at all, and I think I also asked Cena this as he was talking about, and he spoke on both sides. He's talking about RealPage, and he was like, there's some benefits, some advantages that they've brought to the market, and with some of the acquisitions, and there's some disadvantages. And I asked, is one of the bigger or advantages of them with when they were going through these like stretches of tons of acquisitions, that they were actually cleaning things up. If you follow me. So as exciting as it is to have all these new providers entering the space, and it's like we're in the era of, open data, open, APIs. And so now, we can welcome all this disruption, and we can, experiment, innovate, and accelerate. That there's also the challenge that you guys face where it's like, okay, now the floodgates are open, and it is actually so fragmented that it could potentially slow us down, or it's just, overwhelming as operators to try and choose now with this, kind of Vegas buffet of new technology. And it just makes it harder to me. It's like, narrow focus, broad results. It's like if you're able to, kind of shorten that list, it seems like, more likely to find success than to have to weigh just countless options. So when we are in these conferences, we're like, who's that? Who's that? Who's that?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we're going to help you centralize. We're going to help you centralize. We're going to help you centralize. And it's like, man, that's a lot of noise. So I just didn't know how you guys feel about that. And you don't have to comment specifically on RealPage, but just, is there kind of speaking of trade-off, I think me and David are very committed to forcing you guys to agree that there's some trade-offs. But is there any
the trade-off is you can't get out of this conversation unless you
I'm
admit
not
it.
letting you leave. So just
can't see the chain on my leg.
Make one up. But any thoughts?
No, honestly, we have never found one software stack that fits us. We haven't from day one. And so we always have to be nimble. That's always been our approach since we started back in 2011, that we are nimble and that we have different things that fit our needs. And, there's some amazing providers, prop tech people out there that are doing some amazing things. And, those aren't problems that I face. And so I'm glad that they're providing a single solution for a single problem. I might not face that single problem. That might be the great single solution that someone else out there might have, but it's not my problem. And so I always take a lot of the prop tech pieces with a grain of salt. And I always try to figure out, okay, and I focus on what is my goal? What is my number one priority? And everyone out there is telling you they can provide centralization for you. They can't. They can't. So no prop tech provider out there is going to lock us in because they're the only ones that can do centralization. Centralization is more than just software. So
yeah. Well, I'd say always follow the money. And if you think about where has capital gone over the last, call it 5 to 7 years, has multifamily become the darling in comparison to office and industrial? Absolutely. So all of this capital flows into multifamily. Guess what follows? Prop tech.
Yep.
So for years, it was mostly Yardi and RealPage. Today, I'd say that we have the most disruption in this industry ever. Union, who we use as our centralized platform software provider, they are old Amazon guys. And when they shine the light on our space, they said, we see opportunity. That's not a knock on RealPage or Yardi, but there's some opportunity here. And I think a lot of folks see it that way. You see the capital running to multifamily. You see prop tech changing here. It's as dynamic as ever. And of course, you walk around that room, you're like, I don't know what that means. I don't know who's that? What's that name? Are they brand new? I think there's good things to that, because for every 100 that they create, maybe 5 stick, and they're fantastic and they disrupt the environment and it makes us better. So I'm all for more disruption.
Great. That's awesome.
Well, this was a really fun conversation. I feel like this is the deepest I've really gotten with centralization before. Like a lot of times I feel like it's a lot of mumbo
hopefully you don't say
smoke.
that with Jendo after the conversation.
Yeah,
It's way deeper than John and Heidi.
Yeah, totally.
I'm kidding.
Well, thank you, Heidi. If people want to know more about Blanton, what's the best way?
They should say Blanton Turner and not Blanton.
Can I say BT? No,
BT is all good.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to reach out. LinkedIn, website, whatever's best.
Awesome. And John?
Yeah, LinkedIn, John Carlson, or mark-taylor.com. We're starting our season 3 podcast, Multifamily Forward, very soon. So check us out.
Oh, for sure.
We will do. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.